Welcome to GovConHacks, the go-to podcast for government contractors looking to level up their game. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, we're here to bring you expert tips, actionable advice, and insider knowledge to navigate the complex world of government contracting with confidence. Each week, we break down topics, interview industry leaders, and share real-world strategies to help you win more contracts and grow your business. I'm your host, Ashley Duwel, alongside my co-host, Natasha Velez, and together, we're here to help you crack the code of government contracting. So grab a notebook, settle in, and let's get hacking. Hey everybody, happy Thursday. Welcome back. Joined this evening, my lovely co-host, Natasha.
Hi, and happy.
She is a Halloween enthusiast, and we are joined by a very special guest for our topic this evening, finding your niche. And I'd like to introduce Brittany Opoku. Brittany, please join us and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and why you're the best person to present this topic.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I am Brittany Opoku. I am the owner of First Foster Consulting. I have about 15 years of experience in federal government contracting. I've worked for a federal government agency, and I've also worked, as I am now, on the industry side. I have a team of consultants where we have specialties from IT, facilities, janitorial, construction, as well as management acquisition. We always say at First Foster, your firm is our first priority because we were built based off of small businesses. I think in government contracting a couple years, well, I'll probably say like 10 years ago, there was like the big kahunas of the government contracting consulting firms that charged really, really high fees. And then all of a sudden you started to notice that there were other small businesses that were entering into the playing field. So we kind of saw a need that we had individuals who were going after GSA schedules specifically, and then they would get their schedules, and then there was no one to help them with BD and capture. So that's essentially how First Foster was started. I personally have a passion for small businesses. I'm a small business consultant. I'm certified by the Association of Accredited Small Business Consultants, and I'm just happy to join you guys today.
We are certainly happy to have you. You had mentioned before we went live that you had written a piece for NCMA on this very topic. So I'm going to pretend that I know nothing about this industry because I've gotten a lot of questions, especially recently post-COVID, from small businesses. They're struggling to find their niche. They don't know if they want to do this or that. They're bidding on opportunities that, they're having trouble getting their experience to kind of fit. So why is this niching down even important? Let's just start there.
So I like to tell everyone it really just starts with you, right? And the beauty of this is that now the government is so keen on this whole idea of key personnel, to whereas you have so many proposals now where in your section L, which will have your instructions, they will tell you that you can provide past performance from a company, the predecessor, the successor, and any key personnel, right? So when we say, well, what's the importance of finding your niche? Well, the government is already saying that we want it to start with you by kind of niching down and tell us exactly what makes your company special, or why your company is the best company to provide these services and or products. And I think the key here is, if the government is already saying that we'll give you the leeway of your expertise, why are we not kind of having that idea that I like to tell kind of like my micro small business clients? I say, hey, let's always look big when we're small. If you've spent 30 plus years in a particular industry where you've been working for a larger firm and you've done all of these things, why can't we turn this around and package this so that this is something that is now in the name of your company, but it's really based off of your experience? And when you look at something like government contracting that has gotten so much more competitive over the past decade, it's one of those things where you saying that, I've been in IT for X amount of years and I've done this. If you try to go get a job as just, let's say, an IT functional expert, they would be looking for specifics like, well, you're IT functional expert, but that's such a broad category. What else can you do? So you look at something like IT and you see how much it's grown to, whereas look at how cloud is now, right? So you have AWS, you have Google, you have Microsoft Azure. So even in that kind of scenario, from an IT perspective, you could take yourself from an IT functional expert where you focus on cloud-based services and you take those three different cloud providers and you say, okay, well, I'm going to choose one of them and that's what I'm going to get a certificate in, as an example, right? Or if you look at like the comp TIA certifications with IT and how they've broken them down so much over the years. I mean, I remember being back in high school and they were offering us to take comp TIA courses. And at that time, we only had like three options.
Yeah.
One of them were network, right? One of them was like network. The other one was just general. And it was like one more. And that was it.
That was
right?
IT.
Yes. So, and then also too, back then, like network management was so hands on, right? Like, I mean, we were trying to actually fix computers in the classroom. So I say that to say we want to niche down because we have to look at the industry trends. And if you have an industry such as IT that is now so prominent with all of these different certifications, I would take that same approach as I would an individual trying to make myself trying to make my resume better or trying to make myself the most hireable candidate. I'm going to have a lot more specifics on my resume so that individuals can see that I'm truly the best fit for the job. So what I try to tell clients, and anyone that is new to this industry is that it's really not that difficult when we look at it from that perspective. The same way that you would sell yourself to a specific job is the same way that we want to sell ourselves to a federal government agency for a specific type of service or product that we want to provide.
Ooh, well said. I love that.
Very well said.
That was beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Natasha, next question is yours, my dear. I have a slew of them.
Oh, I just make them up as I go. So I know how I roll in this role. So niche. Now I want to say that like a lot of people are coming from personal experience, right? And they're coming into government contracting and they're trying to like start a business. So they really don't know what their niche is. And it could be their personal experience, but like, what would you say, like, if I hated my job and I hated what I did for the past 10 years, but I wanted to start a business, but I just don't know what that looks like, but I want it specifically to be in government contracting. What are some of the steps that I can kind of figure out what is the best niche? Because right now when I ask, and we have like a group of like 6,000 people, we'll ask them, what's your niche? And they're like, middleman. And I'm like, that's not a niche. That's a strategy that you choose.
No, it's not a strategy. It's not a strategy. It's not a strategy.
That's your strategy, I guess.
No.
But you have to have somewhat of a niche. And I think where we get lost is if you don't know how to do one thing, you think you're a master of everything, but you're really a master of none. So how do you guide clients in that regard when they come to you and they're just like, I do everything and I don't know what I do?
So the first thing that I will say is in regards to, let's say someone comes from an industry where they've done it for 30 years. They don't necessarily want to do it, but they want to get into government contracting. My first response, honestly, is kind of like, suck it up, buttercup, right? Like we at least need to do this for the first 18 to 24 months because research shows that it takes a minimum of 18 months to secure your first government contract, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I would always tell clients that I always felt like that number was a bit longer. But now that there's so many additional steps in regards to how long it takes you to even get set up as a government contractor, it's just a lot more time that really kind of it takes to really get started, right? But that's really the first thing is the reality is that you're going to have to do something that you don't necessarily want to do to get to where you're like, oh, I'm passionate in this. I love to do this, right? I always tell everyone like that's entrepreneurship 101. And then you get to the point of the business side of it. But I think the second part is like, I go about it where I will ask the client like, well, what makes you different from this company? I'm a very big proponent of research and data. So I'm not going to just niche down for the sake
round of applause.
Yes, because the numbers don't lie. And I tell everyone all the time, like the federal government does a great job of producing the numbers, right? And that is a thing of, well, the numbers are one thing, but then we have to make sure that that analysis interpretation is there of what exactly it means. So I like to ask clients, who exactly are your competitors and what makes them different? And the one thing that I will tell you is that there are a lot of like podcasters out there. There's a lot of like coaches out there now where they'll kind of tell you like, oh, well, you don't really need to worry about your competitors too much. It's like a mindset thing on the other side, right? Like have the success, wealth mindset, focus on yourself.
Focus on you. Like, no.
Yes. And, with government contracting, that is just not the case, right? So we want to research and really want to find that data. And we do want to look at those companies who are bigger than us, who are doing exactly what we want to do, because the reality is that you want to see what customers they're working in. You want to make sure that you get an idea of, well, if they have 10 NAICS codes on their schedule, on their SAM profile, you can essentially go to FPDS and figure out if they're really making money. Right.
Just because they have them doesn't mean that they're doing anything. Right.
Yes. This is public free data that is available. And then I think that next part is when we start to look at our competitors, that's where I'm really able to get clients to really start to pull out, what things really make you different. I like to tell clients like it's your secret sauce. If we were putting together a sandwich for you, how would we put this sandwich together? And what are those things that we would put on there? And what I like to take clients a bit further is, well, once we get settled with, okay, well, these are, let's say our key things that make us different in regards to the type of services we can offer. Then I like to go to those things that are on that CPARS rating report where, okay, so let's talk about what can make us different in cost control. Well, let's talk about what can make us different in quality assurance. What can make us different in management? What can make us different in delivery and customer service? Because the reality is that like this is what is like the race to the bottom with so many inexperienced companies is already a tough thing with government procurement. But I think that second part is, you have companies that will write a compelling proposal, but yet they get on the contract, they win it, and they fall flat on their face, right?
Yeah, the government has to recompete that contract, and it just costs them twice as much money.
Every single event I go to, I have 1 million services listed, and the only one anyone asks me about is proposals. I'm like, you don't need just that.
You do not just need proposals.
I am the last person you need.
Right?
I mean, you guys don't understand. Like, I think it probably was like 2 weeks ago. Like, I just had to tell a client, like, do you know that we've already lost this proposal and we haven't started writing? Like, let me tell you why we've already lost this proposal. And I always tell clients, like, the proposal is the last part. It's like the icing on the cake. There's so many things that come into it. And again, I mean, I've worked with so many government contractors that have so many variants of experience to where it's like I still have colleagues that I work with to this day that, I mean, they were doing government contracts back in the 90s and they did terrible. They were getting bad CPARS rating. Yeah, like, I mean, it was, and remember, a lot of stuff also too back in the 90s was very much paper. Okay, that's another thing. Like, they were printing out proposals. So no, like I really say that, your niche is not just the services that you can provide or how you can make them different. You really have to look at your whole infrastructure of how you can sell your company as a viable package. And what I like to tell clients is like, once you get to a point where you niche down in regards to your service offerings, now it's almost like a domino effect, because when you niche down with your service offerings, you're going to actually get strategic partnerships. Like I try to tell clients all the time, they're like, oh, we have this partner or that partner. Is it a strategic partner, right? Because when we say strategic partnerships, just as you niche down, you would niche down on your partners to make sure that these are partners that not just are partners that want to work with you because you went to college with them, but these are companies that are
set you have.
Yes, these are companies that are set up where there's really a value. And at the same time, one thing that I feel like it's a lot harder for small businesses to do is I will say this, it's easy for them to go and get like a ISO 9001 certification on quality management systems, right? But the problem is in between those renewals for that certification, we start to slip on those repeatable processes. So I think that whole idea of niching down just from a service standpoint and then going further into your company's infrastructure, you then kind of starting to put yourself in a position where, the government is not just going to read a proposal and say, wow, this is a compelling proposal. This company knows what they're talking about. No, they're going to actually see some really good examples like, oh, no, this company is the real deal.
You need proof points. You really do.
Yes.
You need proof points. You need win themes. You need differentiators. You need to know who your competition is so that you can write to that and slowly slip in those win themes that are your differentiators from the competition. So yeah, you need to know all of that. But
Right, but if you don't know who you're bidding against, and I know that some people out here say, well, the incumbent doesn't matter.
Oh, they completely do.
It absolutely does matter in a lot of industries. If there are folks out there who will avoid a bid if they expect to be bidding against a certain company that they know is going to drag them through a protest, for example. And there are some companies out there that will try to strong arm smalls, right? That happens. But if you've done your due diligence and you've laid your groundwork, like Brittany said earlier, like the proposal is the icing on the cake. So if you've got strong systems, and strong controls, like that puts you in a much better position to be able to withstand those protests should it, become a thing. But Brittany, so I know that it's happened to me, it's happened to a couple clients that I've had, back to that doing the thing that you don't want to do for a couple years, right? My question becomes, let's say we're doing the thing that we're not doing or that we don't want to be doing for a couple of years, and we're sharing an office with a program manager, and we happen to hear, of other existing needs that they have, pain points that they have, what keeps them up at night. What should we be doing with that information?
So the one thing that I tell my clients all the time, and sometimes we do a little bit of contract management for clients, but a lot of the times we really stay on the pre-award side. And I say that because we only do contract management to kind of help them get started and really kind of tell them like, okay, well, we wrote this awesome proposal, so let's make sure we know what's in it, right? Like we know what we have to be accountable for.
That project plan.
Yes. So the one thing that I like to tell clients, and I think it's something that I've learned very well, just being a business owner myself, is that you really have to always be selling your company, right? And that means that when we win that one contract, even if I don't have a PM that is assigned to that contract, me as the business owner, I'm going to be the PM, but guess what? I'm also going to be my own BD person, right? So that means that not aside from sticking with things that are contractual that I have to do, I'm going to try to set up like quarterly calls with my program office, with the core to check in to see that how things are going beyond just the standard meetings that you have to have, as well as the standard reports. Yes, and the standard reports. The second thing is that every time something else new happens within my company, I'm going to send an email and let my customer know. And I try to tell clients like, this is important. Like I don't know how we've gotten so scared to share information with customers. Okay. Now I'm not talking about blasting, press release on LinkedIn about contract awards. It's so much more impactful if we tell our customers, this is what we're doing now. This is what we've added. Oh, by the way, we've just onboarded, someone who is a former chief of this particular agency, and this is the things that they do, or someone that has this experience, or, we just included this service offering where we now are able to have a partnership with let's say like a ServiceNow. And now we're able to provide this software as a service. That's what I would always say, like you have to do those things, because to be honest with you, if you stay in contact more with your customer and you let them know what you're doing and you try to get that communication beyond just what you have contractually, I promise you, I've seen it every time. You start to get more proof points from a contract than you ever would, because you're constantly talking to them. You'll find out things like, I promise you, I had one client where it was like an employee just happened to be replacing a picture frame that had a well-known judge in it. The government employee had been walking past this picture frame for like so long, but it wasn't something necessarily that was like contractual, that it was like, oh, this is a deliverable, but they must do. It was a like maintenance and repair contract, but they have to actually put in service orders for the contractor to fulfill it, right? So the employee ended up like actually replacing the picture frame and like cleaning up around the area, and like the government employee wrote like this whole personal kudos, because they were
Wow.
just so amazed that they had like that level of detail, and then just that proactiveness. So
Yeah.
that was something where that wouldn't have been on a quarterly report. That's not even something, honestly, that
Right.
would have even been brought up in those standing meetings that you would have. That's something where the client has worked really hard to have that communication in between those deliverables, and they gave us a full-blown kudos without us even having to ask for it. So that's how I would go about, keeping that communication not just open, but overly communicating, so that you can really develop a relationship. Because what happens is, the more they know without having to ask you, the easier they're going to be like, hey, we have an opportunity coming up. It's an RFI. I'm going to send it to you. We're looking for firms. Let me know if you can do it. I may have to send it out to a few others, but I want to send it to you first.
And if you do good work,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they see that, right? And we forget, because we're selling to the government and these big stone buildings, that they are human too, just like you and me.
Yep.
So I completely 10,000% agree with all of that. And I tell them in different words almost weekly. I think you guys can attest to that. As we're nearing the end, I do, before I go asking Brittany more questions, if anybody in the audience has any questions, if you want to ask Brittany, please do pop your questions in the chat. We'll make sure we get to those before the end of the episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. So when we're talking about elevating your strengths, and Natasha, you alluded to this as well, your win themes, right? Let's kind of dissect that a little bit, because if you're not asking for the debriefing, win or lose, sometimes you're meandering out here blindly and you don't know why you're winning or why you're losing, for that matter. And I always push, if you lose, get the debriefing, even if it's an unofficial debriefing. But why would you want to get one if you win?
So it just has to be the luck of the draw that you asked me that question, because I just set in on a debrief that a client requested for an opportunity that we did win. And it was it's been a very, very long
Client
time.
might be a listener.
It's been such a long time since I've had a client do that, to be honest. But it was really good to kind of go through, because one of the key things that she mentioned, she says, we read a lot of these things, and, nothing is more disappointing when you review stellar past performance and the proposal is not good.
Oh,
It was like, that was a very big thing that she kept saying. And I think that second point was, it allowed us to kind of see, well, what little details did we miss that we could have made sure that we sharpen moving forward, right? And I think that is the one thing that I find that has been challenging over the years is, I've had companies that have went on winning streaks for 5 years straight, and then they've lost for 5 years after that. And they tend to be the more difficult clients to work with because they feel like they have it because they won
You
5
know it
years in a
all.
row before.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had one client that his call out box was, "We did this already." I was like, "But you lost it. Like you were
Yes.
the incumbent 2 years."
Oh yes.
That's
So
not a call out box.
so I think so that part, and I think also too, that part of you're now kind of showing them that you're going above and beyond yet again, right?
Yeah.
If they already feel like you've written a stellar proposal, we've won a proposal, now we're asking to go over a debrief, and we're allowing them to give us feedback on what things that we can look at to move forward. At the same time, it was also a good opportunity for us to kind of give them feedback on how exactly it was written. There was like one particular license for one of the key personnel that, we just expressed like, we ran the numbers and the incumbent personnel that is there, that person's like 1 in 25 that have this particular certification. And they were like, you know what? That person has been on a contract for like 15 years. So we were like, okay, now it makes sense. But that level of, we're just showing that not only do we go above and beyond, we're also showing that we value the government's feedback. And then we're also showing that we're detail oriented. And I think even one last point I would say with that is that we're also showing that we can be proactive when there are situations where we may not have did our best. And that was something where it's like, she was very much like, do you have any other questions? Is there anything else that you feel like we could explain more about the requirements? What do you guys think? So it was a real good chance for us to just kind of understand more about their government lens, as well as how our proposal really kind of showed in their eyes. Because I always tell clients, there's so many experts that will tell you how the government is going to review your proposal. And some of them are right. And then some of them are just wrong. Like, I try to tell clients, like, we have to just read and then we have to look at what we have, right? You can read and it says you're in the show. It doesn't say that you were once a part of the show. It says you're here now, just that black and white read of requirements and what we present. But I do want to say one more quick point in regards to those win themes. Where individuals go wrong with their win themes is that they always start with them. And I like to say it very informally, it is not about you.
It is not about
you.
you.
Writing those proposals, it is about that agency first. And then as I need to show in my win themes that I understand the agency. And I always like to tell clients, take the time and read the strategic plans. They go crazy when they see buzzwords of their strategic plans and mention of their strategic plan in proposals.
That's a good piece of advice.
You read that? You read that 30-page document? I mean, sometimes they're like 5 pages. So, those are just some things that, I've seen that make a difference in a winning proposal and just overall winning BD strategies.
And that is a great point, and one that I probably don't get on my soapbox on more often. But I talk a lot about getting to know the agencies that buy what you sell.
Yeah.
So if I had one thing that you could do without having a verbal conversation with anybody, I would definitely say, do your research, pick your top 3 agencies, go view their strategic plan. If you have submitted proposals and lost with that targeted agency, I bet you that strategic plan will cross a couple of dots or T's or I's or however you want to put that.
I really like
that. That's very good advice.
She put that so perfectly, though. That whole, it's not about you.
It's not about you. And that's the thing.
Thinking about ourselves.
Your proposals need to be customer centric. You want to grab somebody and pull them into your world and show them how much you care. You need to make it more about them than about yourself. Now, I know we kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent, but are there any, in our last moment or two, any sort of actionable tips that our audience can take away, things that they can do right now to get them one step closer to identifying? I know you said research earlier, and I happen to agree with that being the first step. I know we talked about reviewing your targeted agency's strategic plans. Is there anything else that you think is important here?
I would probably say really look at the trends of the agency in regards to the spending. You have a lot of intelligent sources out there that will give you this information readily of what, particular services or industries that the government has spent more on in certain fiscal years. But I would really recommend, once you get that solicitation numbers, start to Google to see how much you can find on that particular contract and what other companies pop up on that. It's another site, I think it's like Orange Slice AI, that is really good with like pulling articles from like 10 years ago and showing you what was the history of that particular opportunity, what things were lost and things like that. Because I think sometimes we get a little caught up in, well, they don't give us the FTE count, and we start to assume that it needs like 20 bodies, and then the government will come back and like, we actually need about 5.
Yeah.
So I always like to tell clients, try to really get a good feel for that agency spending and how much they've spent in that NAICS code, and look at a couple of sample requirements or contracts that have been awarded underneath that NAICS code, looking into FPDS, because you can think something that reads like they want IT operations and maintenance, and you would think like, oh, they want us to do their entire infrastructure, and they probably only currently want about 5.5 bodies, right?
Yeah.
So, and you will go back to that agency and see that agency has never even spent more than $3 million total in IT infrastructure, just as an example. So that would be that last tip that I would say, try to gauge that agency spending for your opportunity while you're kind of waiting for the government to come back and kind of tell you who the incumbent is and all of those things.
Absolutely great advice. Now, you can find a lot of this stuff. I know I use USA Spending. Disclaimer is it's broken right now. Can't download anything.
Really? I don't know.
But when you're talking about getting on teams, I can pull down that report. I can tell you the prime, the subcontractors, etc. So if you are in IT and you find yourself wondering where are all the solicitations, they're probably going through a contract vehicle. So put your sales hat on, boots on the ground, start networking with the primes on those vehicles, build yourself some experience so that you can compete on those vehicles. Again, I know IT has been literally the industry of the day. You've mentioned it several times. I was consumed by it all day, so it was fresh on my mind. I wanted to throw that out there. Excuse me, Natasha, any final thoughts from you, my dear? Any actionable tips you think?
No, I think that
important?
if there's anything that I took away from this is that market analysis is key.
Yeah.
Coming up with your niche, when then bidding, and when knowing your customer and targeting your customer. Without the data and without the numbers, you're really kind of just what we like to call blind bidding.
Yep.
And then you're just 1 in a million, and you're not any different from anyone else. So really just kind of put the time in. This is your business, and millions and millions of dollars do not come without a little bit of work. So put in that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you, Brittany. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you on. Your experience and your perspective, I think, were super important to the topic. So we'd love to have you back in the future.
Yay.
Thank you, ladies, so much. It's definitely been a great conversation. I love to talk about this stuff, but I also love to talk about it in unique ways because, I always say this industry has gotten a lot funner than it was years ago.
What gave you that?
We do.
Government contracting. It can't be boring. It just be a little scary. I don't know.
We do. We try to put a little humor in this very dry topic. I'm a lifer. Us GovCon nerds, we probably get a little bit too much of a kick out of it. Well, thank you again for joining us. And the rest of you guys, we will be back here same time next week. We will be talking about IT for our industry special. So a client of mine is going to come on, tell you a little bit about what his last few years have looked like in the space. And we look forward to seeing you back next week. Bye. Have a great weekend, everyone.